the will to choose. The royal courier ship Evening Grace died beneath a sky without stars. One moment it glided through folded space with the effortless silence of Astery engineering, its pale hull wrapped in fields so precise that even the dust of interstellar darkness curved politely around it. The next moment, every light on the command deck turned red. Princess Mollidane Shandover looked up from the diplomatic briefing spread across her table. She was beautiful even by Astery standards, which meant nature had been assisted by several thousand years of deliberate refinement. Her features were balanced without seeming artificial, her dark eyes clear and steady beneath swept silver brows. Her skin possessed the faint metallic luster of her people, like moonlight resting on warm stone. She wore a royal traveling gown of deep blue, severe in cut, and embroidered only at the collar with the white branches of House Shandover. The ship's captain rose from his command seat. "Loss of fold geometry," he said. His voice remained calm. All Astery voices remained calm when panic would accomplish nothing. Then the ship stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. The transition hurled Mollidane against the table hard enough to bruise her ribs. 2 attendants fell. Somewhere beneath the deck, structural members screamed. "What happened?" Mollidane demanded. Captain Arattle's fingers moved over his console. "Our navigation system accepted an external command." "That is impossible." "Yes, Highness." The captain's expression changed by less than a breath, but Mollidane saw the horror in it. The command used royal authentication. 3 vessels emerged around them. They were ugly ships, patched from mismatched hull sections and armored with black plates that seemed welded on by angry giants. Weapon ports opened along their flanks. Grappling fields caught the Evening Grace before its systems could recover. Mollidane stood. "Send a distress transmission. We are being jammed. Erase the royal archives." Already begun. The first pirate shot struck the drive section. The deck leaped beneath them. A wall panel burst inward, showering the command gallery with sparks. One of Mollidane's attendants screamed as a shard of composite cut into her shoulder. Captain Aradel turned toward the princess. "Your Highness, the secure shelter." "No." Mollidane. He had served her family since before she was born. He had never used her name aboard a royal vessel. That frightened her more than the alarms. The second blast killed the lights. Emergency strips came alive in crimson lines along the floor. The Evening Grace shuddered as boarding clamps bit into her hull. Mollidane heard the distant boom of a breaching charge. Then another. The captain drew a slim energy pistol from beneath his console. "You must go. If they possess our codes, they know the shelter. They may not know how long it takes to reach it. And what will you do?" Arattle's small smile was terribly gentle. "Spend the time." The command doors exploded inward. Pirates came through the smoke in scavenged armor, firing before they could see. The first bolt struck Captain Aradel in the chest. He remained upright long enough to fire twice, killing one boarder and wounding another. Then he fell. The bridge became noise, light, and death. A security officer pushed Mollidane behind the command table. He fired until an energy bolt tore through his neck. One of her attendants tried to shield her with her own body. A pirate dragged the woman aside and shot her. Mollidane reached for the fallen captain's weapon. A heavy boot came down on her wrist. She looked up into the visor of a broad creature whose species she did not recognize. Its armor smelled of burned insulation and old blood. "This one," said a voice behind the helmet. "Alive." Mollidane's fear became a cold, bright thing. She would not scream. She would not beg. She had been taught that emotion was weather. A storm could rage without changing the shape of the mountain beneath it. The pirate hauled her upright by her hair. Around her, the people who had guarded, advised, dressed, fed, and accompanied her lay dead among the immaculate ruins of the command deck. Mollidane looked at every face. She made herself remember them. The pirates dragged her through the corridors and across a boarding tube into their vessel. Minutes later, through a stained viewport, she watched the Evening Grace drift away. Someone detonated charges inside the royal ship. Its graceful hull swelled with white light. Then the vessel shattered. The pirates cheered. Mollidane stood among them with blood running from her wrist and said nothing. But deep within her disciplined heart, the weather became fire. Morning at the Order of the Open Hand began with a bell. Not a digital tone. Not a projected chime generated by an intelligence that monitored sleep cycles and blood chemistry. A real bronze bell, cast in a furnace and hung from a wooden tower, struck by a rope pulled by whoever had drawn kitchen duty that week. Its voice rolled across fields silvered with dawn. The order occupied a broad valley on the planet Valence, a near-Earth normal world of green hills, cold rivers, and enough gravity to make most visitors complain during their first month. Brick buildings stood beneath old trees. Gravel paths connected dormitories, workshops, libraries, orchards, barns, and training halls. Smoke rose from chimneys. Bicycles leaned against walls. Laundry moved on lines in the morning wind. To the galaxy, the settlement looked absurd. Its residents wrote on paper. They repaired clocks. They chopped wood, grew food, bound books, mixed medicines, forged tools, and washed dishes by hand. A visitor could walk for kilometers without encountering a powered door. Only one building, distant from the rest and surrounded by stone walls, contained modern electronics. The contact house maintained communications, medical equipment, spacecraft systems, and the minimum technology needed to keep the order connected to a galaxy it had deliberately chosen not to imitate. Everything else belonged to muscle, memory, patience, and attention. Prince Robenate Shandover was upside down beneath an oak tree when the news arrived. He hung from a horizontal wooden bar by the crooks of his knees, his silver skin damp with sweat, his long dark hair tied at the nape of his neck. He wore plain gray trousers and a sleeveless training shirt. Months beneath Valence's heavy gravity had thickened the elegant lines of his astery frame. He was lean rather than broad, but the softness of palace life had burned away. Below him stood Donovan Wayne. Donovan was human, which already made him physically unusual among the Order's many species. Years of relentless discipline had made him unusual among humans. He was tall and powerfully built, though nothing in his posture suggested vanity. His black hair was cut short. His face might once have been called handsome in the easy manner of a wealthy young traveler, but time and purpose had sharpened it. His gray-green eyes seemed to notice a person's breathing before their clothes, their balance before their title, and their unhappiness before they spoke. He wore faded trousers, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and old leather shoes. In another life, Donovan Wayne had owned apartments on 3 planets, eaten meals prepared by celebrated chefs, gambled sums that would have built towns, and traveled merely because staying still bored him. Then, at 26, he had realized that comfort had made him soft in every way that mattered. He had left it. Now he led a community of exiles, scholars, wounded veterans, failed aristocrats, reformed criminals, disillusioned priests, and people who had discovered that the galaxy's conveniences could not tell them who they were. Again, Donovan said. Robenate swung forward, released the bar, twisted in the air, and landed lightly. You dropped your left shoulder, Donovan observed. The ground remained beneath me. The ground is easily impressed. Robenate smiled despite himself. A young brindlefolk novice hurried across the grass from the direction of the contact house. He was barely a meter tall, round-bodied, orange-skinned, and wore an order tunic with the sleeves rolled up 6 times. His name was Pibbin, and his natural expression resembled heroic excitement even when delivering laundry. This morning, he was not smiling. Master Wayne. Donovan turned. Pibbin stopped several paces away, suddenly uncertain. There is a priority bulletin. It concerns the Astery Royal House. Robenate's smile vanished. What happened? Pibbin's wide mouth worked. Donovan looked at him once and understood. Tell him, he said. The Royal Courier Evening Grace was destroyed, Pibbin said softly. All hands are presumed lost. Princess Mollidane was aboard. Robenate did not move. The valley continued around him. Birds called from the orchard. Someone split wood behind the kitchens. The bell rope creaked in the wind. My sister is not dead, he said. Pibbin looked helplessly at Donovan. The wreckage has been confirmed, the brindlefolk said. The news service reports catastrophic drive failure. Robenate walked past him. Donovan caught his arm. Where are you going? To the contact house. To read the same report more quickly? To find the part they missed. Robenate. The prince pulled free. His expression remained controlled, but Donovan had lived with Astery long enough to see the tremor beneath it. Humans taught emotion by contagion. Among the Order, even Astery eventually learned that storms sometimes needed to break. My stepmother has been removing obstacles for 11 years, Robenate said. Officials who opposed her son's advancement retired. Advisors who questioned her influence were reassigned. My eldest brother died in a shuttle accident that no one was permitted to investigate. Now Mollidane's ship accepts a false command and explodes. You do not know that. I know her. Mollidane, Queen Marilyn. Robenate glanced toward the contact house. She wants her son on the throne. Mollidane stood ahead of him. I stood behind Mollidane, but I abandoned court. That made me harmless. You were the fourth son, Donovan said. I was furniture. There was no self-pity in it. That was why it hurt. Robenate had come to Valence because palace life had convinced him that his worth depended on his usefulness to a bloodline. At the order, he had learned to bake bread badly, repair roofs adequately, and endure honest correction from people unimpressed by his name. Only Mollidane had continued writing letters on paper because the prince had told her the order distrusted electronic correspondence. She had teased him about calluses. She had sent books. Once, secretly, she had sent a packet of seeds from the palace gardens because Robenate had mentioned that Valence lacked blue winter lilies. I am going to find her, he said. You are angry. Yes. Then your judgment is compromised. Yes. You may be walking into a trap. Robenate looked directly into Donovan's eyes. Yes. Donovan released his arm. Then you are not ready. No, Robenate said. But she may not have time for me to become ready. That was an answer Donovan could oppose. It was not an answer he could defeat. The pirate vessel smelled of too many bodies, overheated machinery, and air that had been filtered long past the point of mercy. Mollidane spent 3 days chained to a pipe in what the pirates generously called a storage compartment. It was scarcely large enough to deserve the name. Cargo crates had been stacked against the walls without order, their corners split and their faded hazard labels peeling away in damp strips. Several had leaked. A dark syrup had dried across the deck in sticky black fans, trapping dust, hair, fragments of packing foam, and the translucent shells of small vermin that clicked through the shadows whenever the lights dimmed. A cooling line ran overhead, its insulation torn open in several places. Condensation gathered along the exposed metal and fell in slow, irregular drops. One struck the same patch of deck near her knee every 11 seconds. She had counted. The pipe to which she had been chained was warm and trembled whenever the ship's engines changed pitch. Her restraints were short enough that she could sit or kneel, but not stand fully upright. The metal cuffs had already rubbed the skin from one wrist. Every movement reopened the wound. There was no bed. A torn cargo blanket lay in one corner, stiff with old stains and alive with tiny pale insects. Mollidane had left it untouched. Food arrived twice, pushed across the filthy floor in a dented container. The first serving was a lump of gray protein paste with the skin dried over the top. The second smelled faintly rancid. Water came in a metal bottle without a cap. She rationed both. Hunger could be measured. Thirst could be endured. Filth could be observed without allowing it to become humiliation. That was what Mollidane told herself. She sat with her back against the shuddering pipe, gathered the torn remains of her royal gown around her knees, and repeated the names of the dead from the evening grace. Captain Aradel, Lieutenant Seraph, Leora Venn, Attendant Sealane, Guard Commander Thess. She would not let the pirates reduce them to wreckage and forgotten blood. She would not let this room define her. On the fourth day, the hatch bolts scraped back. Light from the corridors spilled across the compartment, revealing the greasy deck, the crawling vermin, and Mollidane sitting upright among the filth as though the chamber were merely an unpleasant waiting room. A pirate captain entered with 2 guards. He was a thick-bodied Keswick with folded plates covering his neck and jaw. One eye had been replaced by a cheap optical implant that clicked whenever it focused. He wore a long coat made from the hides of several animals, none of which had died recently enough to smell pleasant. "Princess," he said. Mollidane looked at him from the floor. "Captain," she replied. His implant clicked. "You know me? You stand as though everyone nearby is waiting for permission to breathe. Either you command this ship, or you are trying very hard to appear as though you do." One guard snorted. The captain struck Mollidane across the face. Her head hit the pipe behind her. Light burst across her vision. She tasted blood. "That was an observation," she said when she could speak again. "Not an insult. It was both." He crouched before her. "You're going to be sold at Kintari Station. Lots of buyers interested in royal merchandise. Then you are a delivery service. The captain's eye clicked again. Mollidane understood that she should stop. She also understood that he enjoyed fear. Silence would deny him pleasure, but contempt would cost him pride. Contempt was worth the price. He seized her chin. You Astri think you're above everyone. No. We merely possess higher standards for bathing. The second blow split her lip. The guards dragged her to an adjoining compartment, where a projection screen flickered above a rusted table. A woman appeared. Queen Marilyn Chandelver wore white. She was an Astri of exquisite refinement, with pale silver skin, golden hair, and a face so serene that painters had spent careers failing to reproduce it. The public called her gracious. Diplomats called her patient. Servants called her nothing at all when the doors were closed. Mollidane, Marilyn said. Mollidane's heart went still. The pirate captain withdrew with a grin. You have caused considerable difficulty, the queen continued. You murdered my crew. Pirates murdered your crew. With royal command codes. Marilyn tilted her head. You always were intelligent. It is why I advised your father against placing you so near the succession. Does he know? Your father knows that your vessel suffered a tragic failure. He is grieving beautifully. The public response has been very favorable. Mollidane's hands tightened around her chains. And your son? Prince Ansel believes you dead. He would never agree to this. No, Marilyn said. And for the first time something almost affectionate touched her expression. He is a gentle boy. Fortunately, gentleness is easily guided. You are doing this for someone who would hate you if he knew. I am doing it for the stability of the kingdom. No, you are doing it because you cannot bear to stand beside power without owning it. Marilyn's mouth hardened. You will disappear among people who buy bodies and names. In time, rumors may surface. A pretender bearing your face. A criminal claiming your memories. By then no one will know what to believe. What about Robenate? The queen smiled faintly. The useless brother? He abandoned his duties to carry firewood with human mystics. He will look for me. Then he will die tired. The transmission ended. Mollidane sat before the empty screen. She did not cry while the pirates watched. Later, chained alone in darkness, she pressed her forehead against her knees and wept without sound for Captain Aradel, for her attendants, for her father, for gentle Ansel, and most of all for Robenate, who loved her enough to come. She prayed he would not. She knew he would. Robenate left Valence in a two-seat courier ship from the contact house. The little vessel looked almost indecently modern against the Order's valley. Its silver hull reflected the tiled roofs, stone walls, orchards, and smoke rising from hand-built chimneys. As its engines awakened, birds scattered from the nearby fields and novices stopped along the gravel paths to watch. The ship lifted on a cushion of blue-white light, stirring dust through the grass and sending the hems of Donovan's coat snapping around his legs. For a few seconds Robenate was visible through the forward canopy, seated rigidly at the controls, his face pale and determined. He did not look back. Donovan watched it rise above the hills, flare white against the morning sky, and vanish. For the next 2 months, he waited. Waiting was not idleness at the Order. Donovan taught classes. He repaired a stone wall after heavy rain. He helped deliver a foal in the east pasture. He read 3 books, wrote 20 letters, and defeated every senior student in the training hall without once striking hard enough to bruise. Every evening, he walked to the contact house. Every evening the answer was the same. No message from Robenate. On the 63rd day, Donovan entered his small office above the library and opened a locked trunk. Inside lay the remains of his former life. A tailored black coat, a gold drinking flask, a jeweled gaming marker from the casinos of Elysian Reach, 3 citizenship documents, deeds, account keys, and ownership certificates worth enough to sustain the Order for decades. At the bottom lay the command token to a ship he had not flown in 7 years. Pibbin stood in the doorway. You're leaving, the Brindle folks said. Yes. Should I prepare a heroic farewell? No. A moderate farewell? Pack food. Pibbin's grin returned, fragile but determined. Food is the foundation of heroism. Donovan lifted the command token. His old ship, the Pilgrim, still waited in an underground hangar beneath the contact house. It had once been a luxury exploration yacht. He had stripped out the gaming room, the liquor vault, and most of the decorative systems. The remaining vessel was fast, quiet, and deeply confused by years of neglect. At sunset, the order gathered beside the hangar. No one made speeches. One by one, they shook Donovan's hand. Sister Vela, an elderly Varelian navigator, gave him a paper star chart marked with Robenate's likely routes. Pibbin gave him 6 loaves of bread, 4 of which were edible. A former mercenary named Cole placed an old pistol in the ship's locker. "You may need this," Cole said. Donovan looked at the weapon. "I hope not." "So do I. Take it." The pilgrim lifted into darkness. Below, the lights of the order glowed warm and yellow among the hills, small as candles. Donovan watched until the clouds hid them. Then he turned toward the stars. Robenate's first mistake was trusting someone who owed him a favor. His second was believing that the favor had not already been purchased by someone richer. He traveled first to Astery Space, using old palace credentials to contact a dismissed security official named Soreth Avon. Years earlier, Robenate had prevented Soreth's son from being imprisoned over a duel. The former official agreed to meet on an agricultural moon beyond the royal communication net. The moon was called Pellerin, though almost no one living there used the name. It was a place of leased soil, automated weather, and endless cultivated valleys carved beneath transparent climate canopies. From orbit, the farms appeared as precise green and violet bands laid across the gray surface, each one glowing faintly beneath artificial suns. The royal communication net did not extend there because nothing politically important was supposed to happen on Pellerin. That was precisely why Soreth had chosen it. Soreth arrived frightened. "I should not be speaking to you," he said. The two men sat in an automated greenhouse among rows of violet fruit trees. Warm irrigation mist drifted through artificial sunlight. "Then speak quickly," Robenate replied. Soreth slid a data wafer across the table. "Your sister's ship received a shutdown instruction from a relay near the Seln Passage. The instruction came through a security channel used by the Queen's household." Robenate stared at the wafer. "Can it be proven?" "Not anymore." "What does that mean?" "It means the relay archive was erased 11 hours after the attack." "But you recovered this." "A routing remnant. It points to a pirate broker operating from a planetoid in the Ister Wastes." Robenate looked at him carefully. Soreth's breathing was too shallow. His left hand remained beneath the table. Astery micro-expressions were subtle, but the order had taught Robenate to watch the whole body. "You are afraid of me," Robenate said. "I am afraid for you." "No. Your feet are angled toward the west door. You expect to leave quickly. Your eyes have moved 3 times toward the irrigation control panel, where someone could conceal a signal device." Soreth went still. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Robenate overturned the table as the greenhouse walls exploded inward. Mercenaries poured through the fruit trees. They expected an Astery prince. They encountered an acolyte who had spent 3 years training beneath Earth normal gravity under a human who believed exhaustion was where instruction began. Robenate drove the table into the first attacker, broke the second one's weapon arm, and vaulted over a hydroponic channel as energy fire tore purple fruit apart behind him. He used the mist, the mirrors, and the narrow growing rows. He moved not with Astery grace, but with something rougher learned on Valence. Economy without elegance. Soreth died in the first volley. Robenate escaped the greenhouse with a burned shoulder and blood in one eye. He reached his ship, pursued the signal on the wafer, and flew toward the Ister Wastes. The planetoid was a trap. He knew it before he landed. He landed anyway. Sometimes love and wisdom point in different directions. The tragedy is not that people fail to recognize the wiser road. It is that they choose the other one with their eyes open. The mercenaries came at dusk. Robenate killed 11. The 12th shot him through the abdomen. Robenate killed him too. Then the prince crawled beneath the wreckage of his own courier and waited beside the bodies for either rescue or death. He did not particularly care which arrived first. At Kintari Station, slavery wore expensive clothes. The station orbited a red dwarf beyond any jurisdiction that possessed both laws and the courage to enforce them. Its central wheel glittered with casinos, fighting arenas, pleasure galleries, private clinics, weapons exchanges, and markets where everything had a price because nothing had protection. Even the slave market had been designed to soothe respectable buyers. Its corridors were paneled in dark polished wood and lit with soft amber lamps. Perfumed air drifted from hidden vents, covering the smells of fear, disinfectant, sweat, and restraint chemicals. Brokers wore tailored coats and spoke in low, cultivated voices, while attendants carried trays of wine between viewing chambers. There were no cages visible from the main concourse, only frosted doors, discreet catalog screens, and elegant signs promising rare servants, bonded specialists, legal dependents, and heritage acquisitions. Kintari preferred language that allowed cruelty to look like commerce. Mollidane was washed, drugged, dressed, and displayed in a glass enclosure. Prospective buyers walked around her. Some wanted ransom. Some wanted status. Some wanted revenge against the Astery. The worst wanted pieces. Mollidane stood in a white gown with a control collar around her neck and endured their eyes. A reptilian broker tapped the glass. Verified royal genome. Another buyer checked the sale file. Mental conditioning? None. Dangerous. Valuable. A group of Varelians passed without stopping, their bioluminescent veins dimmed in horror. One secretly touched 2 fingers to his chest in a gesture of respect. Mollidane almost broke then. Kindness was harder to withstand than cruelty. At last, the sale room emptied. A man entered wearing a physician's gray coat. He was human, or mostly human, with pale skin, close-cropped hair, and artificial eyes so black they reflected no light. 2 technicians followed him. The broker brightened. "Dr. Vane, you honor us." "I purchased the asset," the man said. "Open the enclosure." Mollidane looked at him. "For whom do you work?" Dr. Vane smiled. "For the future." They transferred her aboard a medical ship registered under 6 false names. Only after departure did Mollidane understand what had bought her. The laboratory occupied an entire deck. Transparent gestation columns lined the walls. Half-formed organisms floated behind frosted glass. Robotic surgical arms hung over restraint tables. Dr. Vane walked beside her as guards pushed her forward. "Your stepmother wanted you erased," he said. "We prefer multiplication." Mollidane stopped. Vane gestured toward a column. A face floated inside. Her face. Not complete. Not alive in any meaningful sense. But hers. "We require a living neurological reference," he continued. "Memories, reflexes, personality structure, family knowledge. Once mapped, your copies can be placed throughout Astery space." My father would recognize an imitation. The first time, Vane's smile widened. The second time, perhaps. The 7th? The 20th? A princess denouncing another princess. Each possessing genetic proof. Each remembering private conversations. Each issuing contradictory commands. "You intend to destroy the monarchy. We intend to sell uncertainty." The guard strapped her to a scanning table. For the first time since her capture, Mollidane begged. Not for herself. "Do not do this. My people have done nothing to you." Dr. Vane adjusted the machine. "That is why they are ideal customers." A neural halo descended toward her head. The ship alarm sounded. Dr. Vane frowned. A second alarm joined the first. Then the entire laboratory tilted as something struck the vessel with the force of a falling mountain. "Unknown warships," announced the ship's intelligence. "Multiple hull breaches. Boarding action in progress." The lights failed. Heavy impacts thundered through the deck. A voice boomed through the ship's communication system. It was deep, furious, and richly alive. "This is Commander Varesh of the Varekai Dominion. You entered sovereign space without leave. You will power down, kneel, and prepare to be judged." Dr. Vane ran. The guards followed. Mollidane lay restrained as the laboratory doors blew inward. Varekai soldiers charged through the smoke. They were unmistakably kin to the Astery and unmistakably different. Silver-skinned, broad-shouldered, heavily muscled, they wore dark armor scarred from use. Their faces displayed anger openly. Without the controlled reserve Mollidane had known all her life. One soldier saw her. An Astery. Another looked at the royal markings hidden beneath the collar interface. Not merely an Astery. He leaned close. Princess Mollidane Shandover. His smile contained the triumph of 3,000 years. Donovan found Robenate by sitting still. The pilgrim rested in orbit above the Easter planetoid, her sensors returning nothing useful. Pirate transponders, mercenary beacons, and ion trails crossed one another in a web of false conclusions. The ship's computer generated 37 probable routes and ranked them with admirable certainty. Donovan turned it off. He sat in the pilot's chair, closed his eyes, and imagined Robenate. Not an abstract prince. not a search target. Robenate waking before dawn because he feared being thought lazy. Robenate preferring tea too hot to drink. Robenate reading every letter from Mollidane twice, then storing it beneath his mattress like a child hiding treasure. Robenate believing that directness was honesty even when subtlety would serve him better. Where would he go? To an old contact. Which contact? Someone he believed owed him personally, because Robenate trusted gratitude more than institutions. What would happen then? The stepmother would anticipate him. The contact would produce evidence. Not too complete, not too convenient, but wounded enough to seem dangerous. A trap. Where would Robenate spring it? Somewhere isolated. Somewhere he believed he could approach without exposing civilians. Donovan opened his eyes. He displayed the local system. 7 planetoids. For possessed mining stations. 1 housed a survey relay. 1 had no stable landing surface. The 7th was barren but contained the ruins of an abandoned navigation depot. Robenate valued old infrastructure because the Order had taught him that abandoned things were rarely useless. Donovan set course. He found the wrecked courier 8 hours later. The ground around it was covered in bodies. Robenate lay beneath a collapsed wing, barely breathing. Donovan lifted the metal alone. A human raised on Earth, strengthened further by decades of training, could do things that polite galactic biology considered unreasonable. Muscles designed by generations of gravity, climbing, throwing, fighting, labor, and survival tightened across Donovan's back. The wing rose. He dragged Robenate free. The prince's eyes opened. Master, I told you it was a trap. Robenate tried to laugh. Blood touched his lips. You traveled a long way to be correct. I frequently do. Mollidane. I have not found her yet. Robenate caught his wrist with surprising strength. Promise me. Save your breath. Promise. Donovan looked down at the young man who had once considered himself furniture. I promise. Robenate's grip loosened. Good, he whispered. You are very difficult to escape. Then he lost consciousness. Queen Sariah Langest received her enemies from a throne made of iron. Not decorative iron fabricated to resemble something ancient. Real iron, mined from the mountains of Varekai Prime, hammered by hand, blackened in oil, and scarred by the blades of claimants who had challenged previous sovereigns. The throne room rose around it in dark stone and red banners. Warhouse leaders filled tiered galleries. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder beneath the columns. Every person present wore a weapon. At the center of the hall, Mollidane was thrown to her knees. Her restraints struck the stone. Queen Sariah leaned forward. She was larger than Mollidane had expected. Tall even for a Varekai woman, broad through the shoulders and hips. She possessed the silver skin of their shared ancestry, though hers carried a warmer, darker cast. Her black hair fell in a heavy braid over one shoulder. A scar crossed her left eyebrow and continued into her hairline. Her eyes were amber. She did not resemble the polished sculptures of Astery royalty. She resembled the person who conquered the sculptor. So Sariah said, "The careful children of Asadari lose a princess." Mollidane lifted her head. The Varekai find one by accident. A murmur swept the galleries. Sariah smiled. Good. You have teeth. I understand your people respect them. We respect their use. The queen descended from the throne. Her armor was ceremonial but functional, layered black metal over crimson fabric. At her hip hung a sword too heavy for most Astery men to lift comfortably. She circled Mollidane. Your people called us violent. Your soldiers destroyed the genetic laboratory. Did you prefer it? No. Then perhaps violence has virtues. It has uses. Virtue depends upon the wielder. Sariah stopped before her. Your ancestors abandoned ours. That is not what Astery histories say. Your histories say we rebelled, slaughtered our governors, and were exiled. They say a colonial army seized the frontier systems during a civil emergency. They lie. Perhaps. History frequently does. Sariah's smile faded. Mollidane had not denied it. That was apparently more offensive than an argument. The queen gripped her chin and forced her face upward. You belong to me now. No. I captured the vessel that held you. Dominion law grants rights of seizure. Then your law is barbaric. Yes, Sariah said. But unlike Astery law, it admits what it is. She released her. You will serve as my personal attendant. The galleries erupted with laughter. Mollidane understood the performance. A royal astery reduced to arranging the Varekai Queen's clothing would become a living insult displayed before every noble house. Sariah turned away. Remove the collar. Keep the wrist restraints. One officer hesitated. High Sovereign, she may attempt escape. Sariah looked back at Mollidane. Will you? Yes. The Queen laughed. I believe we shall understand one another. Robenate survived. Donovan left him at a Federation medical station under the care of a Varelian surgeon whose throat veins flashed bright blue when Donovan explained the injuries. The station's surgical wing curved along the inner rim of a quiet orbital habitat, all pale walls, filtered light, and windows overlooking the blue-white planet below. Medical drones moved soundlessly between sealed treatment rooms while translucent displays floated above each bed, translating heart rhythms, tissue damage, and regenerative progress into shifting patterns of color. The air smelled faintly of salt, antiseptic, and the mineral tang of Varelian environmental systems. Robenate looked strangely fragile beneath the clean sheets, his silver skin nearly colorless against the white fabric, one side of his body wrapped in regeneration mesh and his abdomen hidden beneath a humming field cradle. He requires immediate regeneration therapy, the surgeon said. Will he live? If he obeys instructions. Donovan glanced toward the unconscious prince. So he may die. The surgeon's crests bent with reluctant amusement. Before entering surgery, Robenate regained consciousness long enough to tell Donovan about Soreth, the false trail, Kintari Station, and the genetic buyers. Black eyes, he whispered. Human doctor. Vayne. Donovan knew the name. Not personally. Men like Vayne existed wherever law became expensive. Genetic piracy demanded specialized laboratories, protected shipping routes, and buyers who could afford civilization's worth of harm. Such operations left trails invisible to authorities because authorities searched for databases, transfers, and authorized traffic. Donovan searched for appetite. At Kintari Station, he wore his old black coat. It still fit. The station's entry scanners registered one human male, no visible weapons, and several biological readings sufficiently abnormal to trigger an automated medical warning. Donovan dismissed it and walked into the market. Kintari glittered around him. Music throbbed from gambling houses. Pleasure advertisements drifted through perfumed air. Armed buyers examined captives beneath colored lights. Drone cameras followed anyone whose death might attract an audience. A station enforcer blocked Donovan's path. Humans pay an atmospheric surcharge. The atmosphere is included in the docking fee. Humans pay twice. Why? You breathe aggressively. Donovan looked at him. The enforcer was twice his width and covered in ceramic body plates. Behind him stood four companions. I am looking for Dr. Vayne, Donovan said. Information costs. Donovan handed him a credit marker. The enforcer checked the value, pocketed it, and smiled. Never heard of him. Donovan nodded. Then he took the marker back. The enforcer reached for a weapon. Donovan caught one finger and bent it until the large creature knelt. The first companion swung a shock baton. Donovan turned, allowed the baton to pass his shoulder by a centimeter, and drove an elbow into the attacker's central nerve cluster. He took the baton before it fell. The remaining three drew guns. Donovan threw the baton into the overhead lighting. Darkness fell. 3 shots flashed. When emergency illumination returned, all 5 enforcers were unconscious. Donovan adjusted his coat. A brindlefolk dealer peered from behind a stall. That, he said in awe, was an excellent disagreement. Dr. Vayne. The dealer's grin vanished. Genetic market. Lower levels. Ask for the White Orchard. Thank you. Are you going to destroy it? Possibly. The brindlefolk climbed onto his counter. I have always wished to witness a human wreck organized crime. Stay here. Heroic observation requires proximity. Donovan looked at him. The dealer sat back down. Distant proximity. The White Orchard occupied 6 secure laboratories beneath the station. By the time Donovan reached the central office, 3 blast doors had been removed from their frames, 7 guards had reconsidered their employment, and the station's Criminal Arbitration Council had issued a formal complaint. The administrator attempted to erase the records. Donovan placed his hand on the console before she could. Where did Vayne take the princess? I don't know. He watched her pupils. Where did he intend to take her? I don't know. Which route did his ship file? No route. That was true. Who purchased fuel? Her eyes shifted left. Donovan turned toward a clerk. The clerk ran. Donovan caught him before he reached the door. 20 minutes later, he had the vessel's departure vector. For hours later, the Pilgrim reached the edge of Varekai space and found debris. Fragments of Vane's ship drifted among the remains of 2 pirate escorts. Bodies rotated slowly in the dark. No life signs. No escape craft. No asteroid genetic traces. Donovan sat before the sensor displays. The computer concluded that Mollidane had likely been destroyed with the ship. Donovan considered the wreckage. Varekai weapon scoring marked the hull. Their ships preferred close assault. Their culture valued prisoners taken in honorable combat, particularly valuable enemies. The genetic laboratory had entered Varekai space. It had been boarded. Mollidane had not died there. Donovan turned the Pilgrim toward the Dominion. Mollidane learned that Queen Sariah liked her tea bitter, her rooms cold, and her boots arranged with military precision. She learned that the Queen slept 4 hours each night, read casualty reports before breakfast, and personally answered letters from the families of dead soldiers. Some mornings Mollidane entered to find 3 untouched meals cooling beside stacks of handwritten replies, each signed in Sariah's own hand. The Queen never dictated those letters. She wrote them slowly, sometimes pausing over a name for several minutes before continuing, her expression hard enough to discourage sympathy and tired enough to invite it. She learned that Sariah berated officers who made excuses and promoted servants who spoke unpleasant truths. A young chamber attendant once informed her that a visiting warlord's ceremonial cloak smelled of mildew. Sariah stared at the girl until everyone in the room stopped breathing, then doubled her wages and ordered the warlord's quarters inspected. By evening, 3 rotting wall panels had been removed and the attendant had become assistant housekeeper. She learned that the Queen could be casually cruel. Again, Sariah said. Mollidane stood behind her chair, braiding the Queen's heavy black hair. The braid is symmetrical. I do not want symmetrical. I want strong. It is hair. It is the first thing an enemy sees from behind. Then perhaps you should wear a helmet at breakfast. Sariah looked at her reflection. For one dangerous second, silence held. Then one corner of the Queen's mouth lifted. You are improving. At hair. At surviving me. Mollidane tightened the braid more than necessary. Sariah did not flinch. Their conflict became ritual. Sariah made Mollidane carry trays before visiting warhouse chiefs. Mollidane corrected their historical quotations. Sariah ordered her to polish armor. Mollidane discovered corrosion beneath a ceremonial plate that would have failed in battle. Sariah summoned her at midnight to refill a fire basin. Mollidane found the Queen alone, reading the names of civilians killed in a border raid. You knew them? Mollidane asked. No. Then why read every name? Because I ordered the strike that provoked the retaliation. Mollidane set another log on the fire. An asteroid ruler would appoint a review commission. Yes. It would determine proportionate responsibility. Yes. The report would take 6 months. Sariah looked at her. And the dead? They would remain dead. The Queen returned to the list. Mollidane stood beside her until dawn. Resentment did not vanish. Neither did hatred inherited across thousands of years. But both women began to suspect that the person before them was more inconveniently human, though neither was human, than the enemy in their histories. Then a guard entered the chamber. High Sovereign. A foreign vessel crossed the boundary. What species? The officer hesitated. Human. Sariah's brows rose. Alive. The pilot surrendered. Mollidane turned so quickly that the tea service rattled. The Queen noticed. You know him? No. It was a poor lie. Sariah smiled slowly. Bring the human before me. Donovan entered the throne room in chains. The Varekai had struck him several times during capture. Blood marked one corner of his mouth. His old black coat had been torn at the shoulder. A restraint bar locked his wrists together, and a heavy control collar circled his neck. 2 guards walked close behind him, both breathing harder than he was. One favored his left knee. The other kept glancing at Donovan's bound hands as though remembering how difficult they had been to bind. He walked as though none of it mattered. Sariah watched from the Iron Throne. Mollidane stood beside her in a servant's dress, wrists cuffed. The princess stared at Donovan. He gave her the smallest nod. Relief nearly dropped her to her knees. Sariah saw the exchange. So the Queen said, the weak species sends 1 male. Donovan stopped at the foot of the throne. My name is Donovan Wayne. No title. I have had several. None were useful. You entered my territory illegally. Yes. You evaded 2 patrols. Yes. You disabled a border sensor. It was broadcasting inaccurately. A few nobles laughed. Sariah leaned forward. Why are you here? To take Princess Mollidane home. The laughter grew. Mollidane closed her eyes. Sariah descended the steps. She stood before Donovan. Even without armor, she would have been an imposing woman. In it, she seemed carved from war. She is mine, Sariah said. No person belongs to another. In my dominion, conquest creates obligation. Then let the obligation pass to me. The room quieted. Sariah studied him. You offer yourself as her slave? I offer to take her place. Mollidane pulled against her restraints. No. Donovan did not look at her. Sariah walked around him. Why? She is loved. By you. By many. That was not my question. Donovan met the queen's eyes. She must go home. Sariah misread the answer in the manner of a woman who had spent her life expecting every gesture to conceal ambition. She saw devotion. She assumed romance. Something hard and unwelcome moved inside her. A dramatic human sacrifice, she said. Do your people sing afterward? Frequently. More laughter. Sariah stopped before him. You are too weak to be valuable. Test me. With what? A service. A contest. A quest. Your laws allow a sovereign to set terms for disputed property. The Varekai nobles murmured. He knew their law. Sariah's eyes narrowed. You prepared for this. I hoped you would be honest. That struck deeper than flattery. The Varekai demanded brutality from rulers because weakness invited fragmentation. But dishonesty was despised. An enemy could be respected. A liar poisoned the house from within. Sariah looked toward the royal historian seated among the nobles. Take him to the Hall of Origins. The historian paled. High Sovereign. The machine. Every voice in the hall died. Sariah looked back at Donovan. 3,000 years ago, our founders carried a sealed device from a Sadari. It has defeated scholars, engineers, intelligences, and kings. Open it. And Mollidane, if you succeed, I will consider your request. Consider? Sariah smiled. You asked for honesty. The machine waited in a museum beneath the palace. The chamber around it had been carved directly from the mountain's dark stone, its ceiling held aloft by thick square pillars engraved with the names of dead kings, failed scholars, and engineers who had spent their lives trying to wake the device. Narrow display cases lined the walls, holding cracked tools, melted sensor arrays, obsolete scanning helmets, and fragments of equipment ruined during centuries of experimentation. Dust gathered everywhere except on the machine itself. Varekai visitors spoke softly there, not from reverence exactly, but from the discomfort of standing before something their ancestors had never managed to understand. It stood 3 meters tall, an arrangement of black rings suspended around a central silver sphere. No visible power source fed it. No interface marked its surface. Generations of Varekai scholars had scanned, heated, frozen, struck, magnetized, irradiated, and insulted it. The machine had ignored them. Donovan sat before it. Soldiers, historians, engineers, and recording drones surrounded him. He requested the complete translation of every inscription associated with the device. Then he requested paper. A historian stared at him. Paper. And a pencil. Why? Because the machine has watched you fail with computers for 3,000 years. The historian disliked this answer, but provided the materials. Donovan read. He read founding myths, military records, old songs, shipping lists, and a child's rhyme carved into a memorial arch. Reason chooses the road. Willpower takes it. Memory guards the traveler. Mercy brings him home. He watched the machine. He listened to the faint harmonics generated by its rings. He noticed that the tones changed whenever someone walked across the room. Not because the machine sensed bodies, but because the floor flexed beneath weight. He asked where it had first been housed. In the colony ship Resolute Dawn, said the historian. What was beneath it? A navigation chamber. What did the founders use for manual navigation input? The historian blinked. Pressure keys. Donovan stood. The black rings were not controls. They were a map. He placed both hands on the museum floor and shifted his weight according to the rhythm hidden in the child's rhyme. Road. Will. Memory. Mercy. The rings rotated. Everyone stepped back. A seam opened in the silver sphere. Light filled the chamber. An Asteri woman appeared in projection, dressed in the uniform of an ancient colonial governor. Her face was exhausted. "To those who inherit this record," she said, "know that the frontier legions were not exiled." The Varekai historian made a broken sound. The projection continued. "The Asadari civil war has reached the core. Fleet Command ordered the withdrawal of all colonial forces for deployment against civilian populations. General Varek refused. The frontier colonies have chosen independence rather than participate in the slaughter." Images unfolded around them. Asteri colonists embracing Varekai ancestors at a spaceport. Ships departing not under attack, but beneath ceremonial lights. Asteri officials transferring supplies, navigation records, and seed archives to the departing fleet. "We do not cast you out," the ancient governor said. "We grieve your leaving. Perhaps our descendants will meet again without the chains of our errors." The record ended. No one moved. For 3,000 years, the Varekai had believed themselves betrayed. Their anger had shaped laws, wars, marriages, monuments, and children. Donovan looked at the historian. "Memory guarded the traveler," he said. "It seems no one remembered to listen. Queen Sariah dismissed the throne room twice before the nobles obeyed. The first command sent only the lesser officers and attendants toward the doors. The warhouse leaders remained in their galleries, trading guarded looks and pretending that curiosity was a matter of state. At Sariah's second order, sharper than the first, armor shifted, boots struck stone, and the chamber slowly emptied beneath a silence heavy with questions no one dared ask aloud. She remained seated upon the iron throne after everyone else had gone. Mollidane stood below her, pale and rigid, her hands clasped so tightly that the knuckles showed silver white. Donovan waited between them, still chained. One link creaked softly whenever he breathed. "My people are built on a lie," Sariah said. "No," Donovan replied. "Your people are built on what they did after believing it." She looked at him sharply. "Do not offer comfort. I offered distinction. The Asteri did not abandon us. One group of Asteri did not. Others may have hated your founders. History is rarely generous enough to give anyone complete innocence." Mollidane spoke softly. "Our records of that era are sealed." Sariah looked at her. "Why?" "Because the civil war nearly destroyed Asadari. The monarchy classified many military archives to preserve stability, to preserve shame. Possibly. For once, Mollidane did not defend her civilization. Sariah rose. "You opened the machine." "Yes. I said I would consider your request. You have considered it." "I have." She descended the steps. "It is not enough." Mollidane's anger flashed openly. "You gave your word." "I gave no promise of release." "No," Donovan said. She did not. The princess stared at him. Sariah's gaze did not leave Donovan's face. "There is a beast in the northern caves," she said. "A Varek. It has killed 30 soldiers, ruined 3 farming districts, and learned to evade our drones." "You want him to kill an animal?" Mollidane demanded. "I want to know what he is." Donovan looked at Sariah. "And if I succeed?" The queen's amber eyes burned. "Then I will decide whether any chain can hold you." The Varek lived beneath a mountain split by ancient volcanic fire. The peak rose from the northern Badlands like a broken tooth, its black slopes veined with rust-red stone and old rivers of glass. Steam drifted from cracks in the earth, carrying the smell of sulfur and wet minerals. Around the lower caves lay the remains of failed hunts, shattered drones, scorched armor plates, drag marks in the ash, and bones stripped clean enough to gleam in the weak daylight. Nothing living moved near the entrance. Even the carrion birds kept their distance. Donovan entered the caves carrying a spear. The weapon was simple by Varekai standards, a steel point fixed to a dark wooden shaft, but it rested in his hand as though it belonged there. Behind him, Commander Varesh and the soldiers stopped at the edge of the shadow, where daylight surrendered to the mountain's heat and the slow, breathing darkness below. The Varekai soldiers offered him an energy rifle. He refused it. Their commander, Varesh, was the same officer who had rescued Mollidane from the genetic ship. He was a massive, scarred man with one mechanical hand and very little patience. "The rifle will kill it," Varesh said. "The rifle has failed 30 times. The soldiers failed. Then why give me their method?" Varesh considered this. I dislike you. You are not required to enjoy every useful idea. Drones followed Donovan into the cave complex. Their recordings were transmitted directly to the palace, where Sariah, Mollidane, and half the warhouses watched. The tunnels narrowed. Donovan moved slowly, studying scratches on stone, old bones, patches of shed hide, and currents in the dust. The Varric was not merely hunting livestock. It was defending a route. He found 3 smaller sets of tracks. Young, he said. In the throne room, Sariah leaned toward the display. The beast attacked from above. It dropped from a ledge in a blur of plated hide, 6 limbs, and a mouth wide enough to take a man's torso. Donovan rolled beneath it. Claws struck sparks from the stone. The Varric turned with astonishing speed. Donovan threw the spear. Not at the beast. At the cave wall. The metal point struck a mineral formation. The resulting crack echoed down 2 tunnels. The Varric snapped its head toward the sound. Donovan ran the opposite way. Varesh swore at the recording. He is fleeing. No, Mollidane whispered. He is choosing the ground. Donovan reached a narrow fissure above an underground river. The Varric charged behind him, too large to turn easily between the walls. He planted 1 foot against the rock and leaped. The beast followed. At the last instant, Donovan caught an overhead stone shelf, swung sideways, and drove both feet into the Varric's head. Its charge carried it beyond the ledge. 1 claw caught his shirt. The fabric tore. Donovan struck the rock wall, lost his grip, and fell with the animal. He landed on its back. The underground river boiled beneath them. The Varric twisted. Donovan wrapped 1 arm beneath a plate at its throat, found the gap he had observed in its movement, and drove the broken shaft of the spear into the nerve channel behind its jaw. The beast screamed. Its claws tore across his side. Donovan held on. The Varric struck the ledge, shuddered, and became still. For several seconds, Donovan remained draped across it, blood running down his ribs. Then he stood. He found the nest an hour later. 3 young Varric crouched inside, blind and hungry. Donovan stared at them. At the palace, the nobles waited for him to kill the offspring. Instead, he gathered them into a cargo sling. He returned at sunset, carrying the adult Varric's severed head in 1 hand and dragging the sling with the other. Varesh met him outside the caves. You saved its young. They were not attacking your farms. They will. Relocate them to the Western Preserve. Feed them livestock carcasses until they learn the territory. Varesh looked at the enormous head. You killed the mother. It gave me no alternative. And the young. They did. For the first time, the Varekai commander smiled. Reason chooses the road, he said. Donovan wiped blood from his side. Willpower takes it. The Varric's head lay before the Iron Throne. It had been placed upon a reinforced stone platform, though 1 horn still extended over the edge. Black blood darkened the grooves beneath its jaw, and its plated hide caught the torchlight in dull copper flashes. The palace servants had cleaned it as well as they could, but the throne room still carried the wild mineral smell of the caves. Sariah stared at it, then at Donovan. The gathered nobles had fallen unusually quiet. Several had watched experienced Varekai hunters fail against the creature. Others had lost soldiers, livestock, or relatives to it. Now the human stood before them wearing fresh bandages beneath a torn shirt, his face pale from blood loss and his posture maddeningly calm. The drones had shown everything. His speed, his strength, the wounds he continued to ignore, his decision to save the young. They had also shown the moment he could have chosen the easy victory and did not. That, more than the dead beast, unsettled Sariah. Any warrior could kill when cornered. Mercy required enough confidence to leave something alive. She had expected a primitive. Instead, she had found a contradiction. You are not weak, she said. No. Yet you allowed my guards to strike you. Yes. You could have killed them. Probably. Varesh coughed into 1 fist. Sariah glanced at him. Certainly, the commander corrected. The queen descended from the throne. Her eyes moved over the bandages wrapped around Donovan's ribs. What are you? Human. That is a species, not an explanation. It explains more than most species realize. Earth was classified by many non-human governments as a DNA world, a planet whose gravity, climate, predators, toxins, diseases, tectonic violence, and weather had spent millions of years testing every organism born there. Humans had emerged neither the strongest nor the fastest creature on Earth. They had simply learned to endure long enough to become dangerous. And Donovan had taken that inheritance and refined it until instinct became technique, pain became information, and attention became a weapon. Sariah touched the restraint bar around his wrists. I have decided. Mollidane straightened. The queen looked at her. You are removed from personal service. Relief crossed Mollidane's face. Then Sariah looked back at Donovan. He will take your place. Silence. Donovan bowed. As you command. Mollidane stared at him. Sariah stared too. She had intended humiliation. Donovan's acceptance made it something else. Donovan Wayne became the queen's maid. He accepted the appointment with the same calm he had shown in chains, though one corner of his mouth tightened when the duties were explained. He had abandoned wealth, status, and comfort without regret. Apparently, dignity would now be tested with laundry. The palace did not know what to do with this. He made Sariah's bed with military precision. He carried her meals. He cleaned armor, arranged clothing, poured drinks, delivered messages, and learned how to braid long Varekai hair from a furious Mollidane during her first day of house arrest. You cannot keep doing this, Mollidane whispered as she demonstrated the braid. I can. She is humiliating you. Humiliation requires cooperation. You killed a Varric. Yes. You broke half of Kintari Station, closer to 1/4. And now you are polishing boots. The boots require polishing. Mollidane threw the brush at him. He caught it. You are impossible. That has been mentioned. Sariah watched him carefully. She assigned pointless tasks. Donovan found purpose in them. She summoned him at inconvenient hours. He arrived awake. She criticized work that had been done perfectly. He corrected it without resentment. On the third day, she ordered him to taste every dish before she ate. Do you believe it poison? He asked. No. Then why? I wish to see whether humans dislike Varekai food. He sampled a spoonful of blackroot stew. Well, it requires salt. Sariah stared at him. No servant had criticized the royal kitchen in 12 years. She summoned the chef. The next bowl was better. On the 5th day, Donovan combed her hair before a meeting of the war houses. Sariah sat before a mirror wearing a dark red gown instead of armor. Without metal and weapons, she seemed younger. The scar above her eye remained, as did the tension she carried at the base of her neck. You are pulling, she said. You are clenching your shoulders. I am sovereign. I may clench anything I wish. It makes the tangles worse. She looked at him in the mirror. Are you always this insolent? Only when holding a comb. A laugh escaped her. It surprised them both. Donovan's hand paused. Sariah looked away. Continue. He did. On the 7th evening, she dismissed everyone except him and sat beside the fire basin. Why did you leave wealth? She asked. Donovan poured tea. Because it gave me everything I requested. That is a strange grievance. I requested foolish things. You could have requested wiser ones. I did not know what they were. He handed her the cup. When every appetite is answered immediately, appetite becomes your ruler. I mistook freedom for having no limits. And now, freedom is choosing which limits deserve obedience. Sariah looked into the fire. My throne has many limits. Yes. My people require strength. Yes. If I show softness, the war houses test me. If I hesitate, border lords act alone. If I forgive too easily, they call it fear. Yes. She glanced at him. You agree too often. You are describing facts. What would you do? I would be honest about the cost. I am. Not with yourself. Her fingers tightened around the cup. Any other servant would have been struck. Donovan waited. Sariah set the cup down. Leave. He bowed and went to the outer chamber. She called him back before he reached the door. Donovan. He turned. The queen looked suddenly uncertain. Stay. So he sat across from her beside the fire. They spoke until dawn. Mollidane watched them change. Sariah stopped humiliating Donovan publicly. The cutting orders became practical ones, and the queen no longer summoned an audience merely to witness him serve. When nobles laughed at his position, Sariah's stare silenced them before Donovan had to respond. Donovan began anticipating the queen's moods, not to flatter her, but to lighten burdens she refused to admit existed. He brought tea before the casualty lists arrived, delayed minor disputes when exhaustion sharpened her temper, and quietly removed meals once they had gone cold enough to prove she had forgotten them again. Sariah noticed every kindness and pretended to notice none of them. Mollidane noticed both. He brought food when she forgot to eat. He redirected quarrelsome nobles until she had slept. He stood silently beside her after casualty reports. Once, when she broke a ceremonial cup in anger, he handed her another object to throw. It was a wooden practice block. She threw it at his head. He caught it. Better, he asked. Marginally. Mollidane also changed. House arrest allowed her access to the palace archives under guard. She and the royal historian spent days comparing the newly opened record with surviving Astery accounts. They found names, letters, evidence that Varekai founders had remained in contact with sympathetic Astery families for generations after separation. The correspondence ended not with betrayal, but with the destruction of a relay network during the Civil War. Mollidane brought one letter to Sariah. It had been written by an Astery governor to General Varek's daughter. We called you rebels because admitting your courage would have required us to confront our obedience. Sariah read it twice. My entire childhood, she said, I was taught that your people watched us starve. My childhood taught that yours chose conquest because discipline offended you. Both histories made useful enemies. Yes. Sariah looked at Mollidane. You said once that history lies. People lie. History merely inherits. For the first time, the queen invited her to sit as an equal. They drank tea together. It was not peace between civilizations, but it was the first conversation that might someday become one. The assassins arrived as blue light. For one breath, the queen's chamber filled with the cold shimmer of matter beam reconstruction, 8 human-like shapes assembling out of sparks and shadow. Then the light vanished, leaving armored killers where empty air had been a heartbeat before. Matter beam technology was tightly controlled in the Dominion. Varekai science could build crude short-range systems, but they distrusted any device that converted a warrior into information and expected a machine to return the pieces in the proper order. A dissident warhouse had purchased a foreign beam array. At 2 in the morning, 8 assassins materialized inside Queen Sariah's sleeping chamber. Donovan slept outside her door on a narrow servant's cot. He woke before the alarm. Not because he heard the beam. The transit was nearly silent. He heard Sariah inhale. Fear changed breathing. Donovan crossed the outer chamber before the first assassin reached the bed. The door was locked. He hit it once with his shoulder. The reinforced panel tore from its frame. Inside, Sariah had rolled from the bed and seized a ceremonial knife. She wore a white sleeping shift, her black hair loose around her shoulders. An assassin fired. Donovan caught the queen around the waist and carried her behind a stone pillar as the energy bolt scorched the wall. Stay here, he said. She stared at him. Donovan. He was already moving. What followed lasted 27 seconds. The assassins wore powered armor and carried energy weapons. They had trained for palace security, royal guard responses, and Varekai combat doctrine. They had not trained for a human who abandoned restraint. Donovan threw the first assassin hard enough to crack the wall. He took the weapon from the second before its targeting system recognized that the distance had closed. He fired once into the third attacker's leg joint, pivoted, and drove the weapon stock through the second attacker's visor. A blade cut his upper arm. He trapped the wielder's wrist, broke it, and used the falling body as cover from 2 shots. Sariah watched from behind the pillar. Until that moment, she had believed the Varek recording showed the full measure of him. It had not. The man who served tea had become something made by gravity, predators, storms, endurance, and choice. His violence was not wild. That would have been less frightening. It was exact. An assassin charged Sariah from the side. She drove her knife into his throat. Another struck her across the face. She fell. Donovan saw it. The last of his restraint disappeared. He crossed the chamber with such speed that the attacker had time only to turn. Donovan caught the assassin by the armor, lifted him, and drove him down through the queen's table. Wood and bone broke together. The final assassin activated a suicide charge. Donovan tore the device from his chest, sprinted to the shattered balcony doors, and threw it into the night. The explosion lit the palace gardens like a second dawn. Then silence fell. Bodies covered the chamber. Smoke drifted beneath the ceiling. Donovan stood in the center of the ruin, bleeding from his arm, side, and forehead. Sariah pushed herself upright. He turned toward her. The violence left his face instantly. Are you injured? That gentleness undid her. Queen Sariah Langest, who had taken her throne in a duel, survived 3 rebellions, and ordered fleets into battle, crossed the blood-covered floor and clung to him. Her hands twisted into his torn shirt. She wept against his chest. Donovan held her. When the royal guards finally battered through the outer doors, they found their sovereign alive in a room of death, wrapped in the arms of the human she had tried to humiliate. Commander Varesh lowered his weapon. He looked at Donovan. Then he knelt. One by one, every guard followed. The next morning, the throne room filled before sunrise. Sariah wore full armor. Her face was composed. Only the redness around her amber eyes betrayed the night. Mollidane stood beside Donovan at the foot of the throne. Neither wore restraints. The queen addressed the assembled warhouses first. House Dareth attempted regicide using foreign matter beam technology. Its leaders have been arrested. Its soldiers who surrendered will be judged individually. Children and uninvolved kin will not be punished. Several nobles shifted. Collective punishment was an old Varekai custom. Sariah's gaze hardened. Strength does not require stupidity. No one objected. She turned toward Mollidane. Princess Mollidane Shandelver, the Dominion's claim upon you is ended. A murmur passed through the chamber. Sariah looked at Donovan. Donovan Wayne, your service is ended. He bowed. You are both free to depart. Mollidane stared at her. You are releasing us? Yes. Why? Sariah's jaw tightened. Because conquest creates obligation. You have paid yours. He has paid more. Mollidane understood what the queen would not say in public. She approached the throne. For one dangerous moment, the Varekai guards prepared to intervene. Mollidane held out her hand. Sariah looked at it. Then she descended and took it. We are not sisters, Sariah said quietly. No, Mollidane agreed. Not yet. Mollidane's fingers tightened around hers. History has been wrong before. The queen released her. Donovan bowed once more. Sariah did not look at him as he left. She could not. The palace transport carried Mollidane and Donovan to the spaceport beneath an escort of honor. Varekai citizens lined the streets. They crowded balconies, rooftops, market steps, and the broad stone avenues leading down from the palace. Soldiers in dark armor held the route open, but even they kept turning to look as the transport passed. Word of the ancient record had spread faster than any royal proclamation could contain it, carrying with it 3,000 years of wounded pride, doubt, and sudden possibility. Some watched Mollidane with confusion, seeing in her the face of a people they had been taught to despise. Some watched with anger, unwilling to surrender an old grievance simply because a machine had spoken. Others lowered their heads as she passed. A few elderly Varekai openly wept. Then, one by one, clenched fists began to rise in the Varekai salute. At first the gesture appeared only among soldiers. Then laborers joined them. Merchants. Children perched on their parents' shoulders. Veterans wearing the scars of wars fought against Astery borders. The salute moved through the crowd like a wave, not an expression of surrender, but of recognition. Mollidane sat very still beside Donovan. For the first time since her capture, the eyes upon her did not make her feel like property, enemy, or prize. They saw her as a person standing at the edge of a history none of them yet knew how to repair. At the boarding concourse, Mollidane turned to Donovan. You are quiet. So are you. I am Astery. It is culturally appropriate. He smiled. She studied him. You know she loves you. Donovan looked toward the palace towers in the distance. Yes. And you left. For the moment. Mollidane's brows rose. Donovan removed a small matter beam locator from his sleeve. The princess stared. Where did you get that? From one of the assassins. You stole a matter beam locator while fighting 8 people. It seemed potentially useful. Mollidane's expression became almost humanly exasperated. You could simply have told her. She is a queen. Sometimes queens need privacy before hearing unwelcome truths. Which truth? That I am not leaving. Light gathered around him. Mollidane's mouth opened. Donovan vanished. Sariah lay face down across her bed and wept into the coverlet. She had released him with her own voice. She had stood before the court, opened his chains, and sent him away beside a beautiful princess he had crossed half the galaxy to save. Every instinct in her had demanded that she keep him, command him, claim some final debt that would force him to remain. Instead, she had chosen honor and watched the palace doors close behind the only man who had ever seen her weakness without using it against her. The coverlet muffled the sounds she would never have permitted anyone else to hear. She told herself Mollidane was better suited to him, graceful, educated, born to the same gentler world of restraint and refinement. She told herself that love, if it was real, should want the beloved free even when freedom carried him into another woman's arms. None of it made the empty room hurt less. She had dismissed every servant. She had removed her armor, her crown, and the expression required of a sovereign whose heart had become politically inconvenient. She had released him because keeping him would have made every kindness suspect. She had released Mollidane because the ancient lie had shown her what happened when a people valued grievance above truth. She had done the honorable thing. The honorable thing was unbearable. A matter beam flared in the center of the room. Sariah rolled from the bed, snatched a sword from the wall, and spun. Donovan stood beside the fire basin. The blue matter beam light faded from around him, leaving him solid and impossibly present in the room she had believed empty. Firelight moved across his face, catching the torn edge of his coat and the calm certainty in his eyes. He looked exactly as he had when he left. Except now there was no court between them, no chains, no duty, and no reason for him to remain unless he had chosen it. She stared at him through tears. For several heartbeats, Sariah could not make herself breathe. Hope struck harder than grief had, because grief had at least been final. Her fingers tightened around the sword in her hand, as though she needed its weight to prove the room was real. Yes. You left. I went to the spaceport. That is what leaving looks like. Only in the early stages. Her sword lowered. Why are you here? To ask why you were crying. She laughed once, a broken sound. You are an infuriating man. I have been told. I released you. Yes. I gave you the princess. No one gives people. You know what I mean. I believe I do. Sariah wiped her face angrily. Go back to her. Why? Because you crossed half the galaxy for her. You traded your freedom for hers. You fought beasts for her. I crossed the galaxy because I promised her brother. Sariah searched his face. Her brother sent you? He tried to find her first. What happened to him? He followed a false trail into an ambush. I found him beneath the wreckage of his ship. Sariah's grip on the sword loosened. And while he was dying, he asked you to save her. He believed he was dying. Were you close to him? He was my student. That is not what I asked. Donovan was quiet for a moment. He came to the order believing he had no value because his family had no use for a fourth son. He worked harder than anyone because he thought usefulness had to be earned every morning. Mollidane was the only person from his old life who continued to love him without asking what he could provide. Sariah looked away. So you did all of this for him. For my promise to him. You surrendered to my soldiers. You placed yourself in chains. You entered the Varex's caves carrying a spear. All because one wounded young man asked you. Yes. Why? Donovan's answer came without hesitation. Because he trusted me. Because I gave my word. Sariah stared at him, something in her expression softening despite herself. And Mollidane. I care for her. I respect her. I would risk my life for her again. The old pain returned to Sariah's face. Donovan stepped closer. But she was never the reason I came back. You love her. Yes. Sariah closed her eyes. There it was. The wound she had expected. Then Donovan continued. But not in the way you mean. She looked at him. He stepped closer. He looked directly into her eyes. I love a woman who carries her people even when they are too heavy. A woman who is feared because she believes fear is the only wall between her empire and chaos. Sariah's breath caught. A woman who reads the names of strangers she failed. Who wants honesty even when it wounds her. Who laughs rarely, and therefore makes laughter valuable. Do not, Sariah whispered. Who is cruel when frightened, generous when unobserved, and lonelier than she permits anyone to know. Tears filled her eyes again. There is a certain timbre in her voice. It is endearing, and I listen for it, and look forward to it every time she speaks. Her walk is graceful, unique, beautiful, and my thoughts wander to places a maid should not wander to when I watch her in the simple act of walking. All that while polishing my boots. He laughed. I am trained in perception. A sound escaped her that was half laugh and half sob. Donovan stood before her. Serving you taught me who you were when no court watched. I found that I admired you. Then I found admiration had become affection. Then, somewhat inconveniently, affection became love. Sariah stared up at him. You came back. I never intended to stay away. What do you want? Donovan considered. I could offer to resume my position as your maid. Sariah struck him in the chest with both hands. He did not move. You will do no such thing. A pity. I had mastered the braid. She seized the front of his shirt. I will accept only absolute commitment. What form does absolute commitment take in the Dominion? Husband. Donovan's eyebrows rose. Direct. We are Varekai. Do I have a period for consideration? No. Then yes. Sariah made a sound of pure, astonished joy and leaped at him. Donovan caught her. The queen wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him with all the emotional restraint her ancestors had supposedly abandoned. Outside the chamber, Commander Varesh heard furniture fall. He looked at the guards. No one enters, he said. A young officer glanced at the damaged doorframe. Is the High Sovereign in danger? Varesh listened to Sariah laugh. Almost certainly. Prince Robenate arrived at the Varekai spaceport 3 hours later in a borrowed medical courier. The little vessel descended awkwardly between armored Dominion cruisers, its white Federation hull looking almost delicate among the black warships. Medical insignia glowed along its sides, and one engine gave an uneven pulse as though the ship had been pushed beyond anything its designers considered wise. When the ramp lowered, Robenate appeared in a dark travel coat thrown over hospital clothing, one hand braced against the hatch, and the other pressed protectively over the regeneration mesh beneath his ribs. He was pale, bandaged, and under direct orders not to stand for more than 10 minutes. He had already been standing for 40. Mollidane waited at the end of the docking bridge. For a moment, brother and sister simply looked at one another. Robenate had imagined this reunion while bleeding beneath a wrecked ship. In every version, he had prepared dignified words. He forgot all of them. Molly. She crossed the bridge at a run. Astri royalty did not run in public. Mollidane did. She wrapped her arms around him, careful of his injuries and not careful of anything else. Robenate pressed his face into her hair. I knew you were alive. You were shot. That is not a contradiction. You reckless, impossible. I learned from humans. She drew back. Donovan. Where is he? Mollidane glanced toward the palace. Negotiating a permanent diplomatic position. Robenate followed her gaze. Oh, very permanent. Oh. Varekai officers approached carrying Mollidane's recovered belongings. Their commander saluted. Princess Shandover. Prince Shandover. Your vessel has been supplied. Dominion escort will accompany you to the border. Robenate looked mildly alarmed by the courtesy. Thank you. The commander hesitated. Our histories concerning your people are being revised. Mollidane inclined her head. So are ours. As the siblings boarded, citizens gathered behind the security line. No one threw insults. No one spat. An elderly Varekai woman touched her fist to her heart. Mollidane returned the gesture. The borrowed courier departed under the protection of 2 Dominion cruisers. Once they cleared the atmosphere, the courier shuddered as Robenate pushed the damaged engine harder than the medical craft preferred. Varekai Prime fell away beneath them, its dark continents and ember-red cities shrinking behind veils of cloud. The 2 Dominion cruisers escorting them held position on either side, their armored hulls close enough to fill the side windows before banking away at the border. The courier's cabin had been built for physicians, not princes. It was narrow, clean, and almost aggressively practical, with 2 pilot seats crowded between medical lockers and a folded emergency stretcher. Pale instrument light washed across the curved bulkheads. Diagnostic warnings blinked amber above the engine controls, accompanied by soft, disapproving tones that Robenate silenced each time they returned. The air carried the sterile smell of disinfectant, warmed circuitry, and the faint metallic trace of regeneration compounds from the mesh beneath his coat. Robenate sat in the left seat, one hand steady on the controls and the other resting close to his injured side. Mollidane occupied the co-pilot station, studying the unfamiliar medical navigation display and correcting their course whenever his attention blurred. They worked in quiet coordination, slipping back into the easy rhythm they had shared as children, Robenate acting first. Mollidane noticing what he had overlooked, neither needing to explain more than a glance. You are favoring the starboard thruster, she said. It is favoring itself. The engine warning suggests otherwise. The engine warning lacks courage. Mollidane reached across and reduced the output by 3%. Robenate looked at her. You have become very commanding. I was sold to pirates, imprisoned by genetic thieves, claimed by a Varekai queen, and rescued by your teacher. My tolerance for foolishness has narrowed. Good, he said, settling back carefully. You will need it at court. For the first time since leaving the planet, they smiled. A communication request appeared across the forward display. Robenate glanced at Mollidane, then reached for the control. The signal carried a palace encryption mark, though someone had added the order's old hand symbol beneath it. He accepted. The stars vanished behind the opening channel, and Donovan's face filled the screen. Behind him stood Queen Sariah, one arm possessively linked through his. Robenate stared. Master, I am resigning as head of the order. You cannot resign. I founded it. That makes it worse. I have appointed you my successor. Robenate nearly came out of the medical seat. I have been a student for 3 years. 4. That does not improve matters. The order does not require a perfect leader. It requires someone who understands that self-mastery is service, not escape. Robenate looked at Mollidane. She smiled. Do not involve me. You are already involved. Donovan continued. I will return to Valence with my bride. Sariah leaned into view. She had changed out of her armor, though she still wore the dark red and black of the Dominion. Her hair hung in a heavy braid over one shoulder, imperfect enough to suggest Donovan had either done it quickly or been distracted. One hand rested possessively on the back of his chair. The other held a cup of tea she had evidently forgotten to drink. There was triumph in her amber eyes, but also something rarer, ease. Away from the throne room, with no warhouses watching and no need to appear unbreakable, she looked younger, happier, still unmistakably dangerous, but no longer alone. Eventually, she said. How eventually? Robenate asked. The queen smiled. When the Dominion is orderly, the warhouses are cooperative, and my border lords discover moderation. Robenate looked at Donovan. So never. Probably not soon. Mollidane laughed. Donovan's expression softened. Take your sister home. Robenate nodded. And the evil stepmother? We will deal with her together, Mollidane said. With a final, somewhat self-satisfied smile, Donovan closed the communication. Robenate turned to his sitter, his face hardened. What do we do first about our dear stepmother? Mollidane looked out at the stars. Once, she would have answered as an Astri princess. Carefully, strategically, with committees, evidence chains, and a plan designed to minimize disruption. She had learned something from pirates, geneticists, Varekai warriors, and one impossible human. Stability was not the highest good when stability protected evil. First, she said, we tell father the truth. And then we give Ansel the chance to choose what kind of man he wishes to be. And our stepmother, Marilyn? Mollidane's eyes reflected the stars. Then we bring her to justice. The Dominion cruisers turned back at the border. The Astri courier continued alone toward home. Behind them, the Varekai began the painful work of rewriting a history that had taught them to hate. Ahead of them, a royal conspiracy waited beneath layers of polished calm. On Valence, a bronze bell would soon ring for a new leader. And in a dark palace built by warriors, Queen Sariah Langest stood beside an open window with her hand in Donovan Wayne's. Cold night air moved through the chamber, stirring the banners above them and carrying the distant sounds of the waking city. Neither spoke. They simply remained together, discovering that strength was not diminished by tenderness, nor freedom by commitment, and that some victories were quiet enough to fit between two joined hands. Reason could choose the road. Willpower could take it. But sometimes love was what made the destination worth reaching. We hope you have enjoyed this story. If so, please click like and subscribe. Thank you either way.